Have you ever noticed that two people can hear the exact same joke and react completely differently? One person laughs, the other gets genuinely offended. Why? I've been thinking about that question for a while, and I don't think the answer is simply that some people have a better sense of humor than others. I think something much more interesting is happening. For example, I've gained quite a bit of weight over the last couple of years, and honestly, I can joke about it. If someone calls me fat, I'm probably more likely to laugh than get angry. Now, that doesn't mean I'm happy about gaining weight. It doesn't mean I enjoy being overweight. It just means that a joke about it doesn't feel like an attack on who I am. But I know that there are people who would be deeply offended by the exact same joke. Not because the joke is objectively worse for them, but because it feels personal. And that's what I find fascinating. Why does one person shrug it off, while another feels genuinely attacked? I think the answer has less to do with the joke, and more to do with what that joke activates inside the person's mind. I've been trying to find a way to visualize that idea. I don't think this is literally how the brain works. It's simply a metaphor that helped me make sense of it. Let me show you. Okay, as you can see, there are different ideas on the screen. Each of these ideas has a corresponding light bulb next to it. Now, these light bulbs are so dark, that's because nothing is connected yet. As we go through life, we don't just collect ideas, we connect them. Some connections make sense, others form naturally over time. Eventually, we end up with something that looks like this. A network of ideas that are all tangled up together in a disorderly fashion, and it just looks bad. Now, there are only a handful of ideas here, but in reality, there could be a lot more. Now let's see what happens when we introduce a joke to this kind of a circuit. So when somebody introduces a joke, it's gonna bring power to the circuit. Let's say somebody makes a fat joke. A joke about the person being fat. So since it's a joke, it's gonna be connected to humor, right? And since it's a joke about the person being fat, it's gonna connect to the weight. Let's see what happens. Whoa, all the light bulbs have lit up. Wait, what just happened? Looks like the joke didn't just activate weight and humor, but all the rest of the topics as well. Let's switch to a better organized circuit and see what happens. Let's look at the same ideas organized differently. They're still connected to each other, and they're connected in such a way that each idea can stand on its own. Let's see what happens when we introduce a joke to this kind of a circuit. Now let's say somebody makes a joke, the same joke that's in the first example. So since it's a fat joke, it's gonna connect to humor. And since it's a joke about the person being fat, it's gonna connect to weight, right? Let's see what happens. Right. Notice what didn't happen. Everything else stayed off. The joke only activated those ideas that are actually relevant. It stayed a joke. This doesn't mean other ideas no longer matter. They're still connected, but they don't all become active every time. And I think that's the difference. Sometimes a joke is just a joke. But if your mind is a tangled up mess, then all kinds of interpretations become possible. And when that happens, it's much harder not to take it personally. And that's why I would advise you to organize connections between the ideas in your head. If that metaphor is even somewhat accurate, I think it explains why sensitivity isn't really about the joke itself. When one small comment activates an entire network of ideas, it stops feeling small. A joke about your appearance isn't just about your appearance anymore. It's suddenly about your confidence, your relationships, how other people see you, whether you're attractive, whether you're successful, whether you're worthy of respect. The joke hasn't changed, but the meaning attached to it has, and I think that's what makes some people so sensitive. Not that they're weak, Not that they are looking for reasons to be offended, but because one small trigger ends up activating far more than it needs to. Now compare that to someone who can laugh at themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean they're more confident, or that they care less. It might simply mean that the joke stays where it belongs. It remains about one thing. It doesn't automatically spread into everything else they believe about themselves. And I think that's an important distinction, because the goal isn't to stop caring. The goal is to stop every single criticism from becoming a criticism of your entire identity. Because when that happens, life becomes exhausting. Every disagreement feels personal. Every joke feels disrespectful. Every criticism feels like an attack on your worth as a person. But if we can learn to separate our ideas, if we can give them room to exist without constantly pulling everything else along with them, something changes. We become less defensive, more curious, more willing to laugh, more willing to examine our own beliefs without feeling threatened by every challenge. And I think that makes us stronger, not because we've stopped caring, but because we've stopped turning every small moment into a battle over who we are. So the next time something offends you, ask yourself, what is the joke actually about? What else is that joke activating? Because the answer might have very little to do with the joke and a lot to do with the network of ideas you've built around it. If you saw my previous video, Opinions Are Like Dogs, you might have noticed some similarities between the two videos. That's because I think they're dealing with the same issue, except the angle of approach is different. So if you haven't, make sure you check that video out as well, if you're interested. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching.